Welcome to the Afro Storybook, collective wisdom and revelations from Africa and her diaspora. This is part 4, self-expression, ancestry, spiritual practice, and religion. Hello, I'm your host, Alexandra Love Sayaiwo Riosa. I interviewed 9 people from Africa and her diaspora all over the world and asked them the same questions about subjects like identity, food, challenges and hopes, and community. My intention is that the stories these speakers share help you feel inspired and connected. Thank you for following along in this 7-part series. In this part of the Afro Storybook, we talk about ancestry, spiritual practice, and religion. And of course, as we spoke about these subjects, tradition was a big part of what people shared. And out of all the parts of the storybook, this subject, the things we talk about today in part 4, this is what my guests spoke about the most. People were highly passionate about their spiritual lives, beliefs, and traditions. And honestly, I probably could take everything that we said just on these subjects and make many, many parts, many episodes just on these subjects. So in part 4, I'm going to do less talking, and I invite you to do what I did, and that's to listen and relate and remember and rest. Because if there's anything that I can draw from what all the speakers shared is that we are not alone in this world. None of us are. There's always a divine support, whether it be ancestors or God or spirits. We are never alone.
Growing up, my mom, bless her heart, was agnostic. Her mom had remarried, and because of the trauma that her mom had experienced in her life, in her first marriage, and in trying to raise a Black family on the South Side of Chicago, and whatever she had been through as a Black woman in America, right? Eventually, she found the Kingdom's Call of Jehovah's Witness and becoming a strict religious household and a strict religious parent that went to the Kingdom Hall every weekend, that participated in Bible study on a regular basis, gave her community with Black people who shared that religion. And the conservative nature of that, the way that they internalized the culture of that religion, showed up in ways, to me, that felt very repressive, very limiting, very rigid. Monotheistic religion has never been something I feel drawn to, but it's something that I've learned to respect in terms of people's choices and how and why they show up. Spirituality, on the other hand, is very intrinsic for me, because what I recognized through my own growth and evolution and struggles and victories and triumph, and this is an ongoing process, is that there's more to life than what I can imagine and what I can accomplish and what I can influence with my own will and ego and through my emotions and my behavior and all this. So I know that. And to me, that is a sense of wonder. So I pray. It's also a source of strength. And I find certainty in the uncertainty, in that the fact that there has to be in our sense and feel deeply that there's something more than what we can see gives me hope. And it ties me to my purpose, because I understand that what's propelling me through life beyond my own volition comes from sources that are older than me. Like, the easiest one to identify is my ancestors, or our ancestors, right? There's my ancestors individually, there's our ancestors collectively. And that can be on levels. That could start with racial identity. It can start with place. Like, we could imagine the continent of Africa and, the European blood in us, we can imagine. But what about things that are even beyond these types of boundaries and locations that are all part of what we wound up becoming, And so that, I guess, is as close as I can get with language to kind of name what I can feel inside of me and inside of life.
Rachel had something to share about this as well.
Growing up, it was more religion. A lot of, obviously we're Anglican, So going to church, being told what you can and can't do, obviously preset, like the levels you need to go. If it's the christening, if it's the baptism, if it's the holy communion, it was all preset. And for me, it was also the emphasis of, if you don't do this, something's going to happen. If you don't do that, which was very funny, because when you look at the culture side of things, it was still also impacting onto you the cultural stories, which you would call, I think white people would call it voodoo or whatever, but like telling you about the ancestral practices that they were there. So you're going to church, the religious side of it, but then you're still being taught about folklore and all of that. And he's like, oh, okay, that's a bit interesting. Then you fast forward again, I think moving here and probably getting older, I would say currently I'm sat on spirituality, only because I say religion is so one-sided and one-dimensional, which I just feel like as an adult, it's not do or don't, because I have choice. And with me, spirituality tells you there's a higher power and you can believe and do certain things, and you're learning, you're constantly evolving, and that power knew that you have choice to constantly evolve. So I find more peace and calm by not even calling myself religious, because honestly, for me, that's BS now. Because the same people who preach the religion are the same people who don't even have, they break the rules, and they don't even have the empathy to even like self-evaluate. Why did you do that? It's not a bad thing, but can you actually hold yourself accountable to that? And that's what spirituality teaches you. Like, it's all right if you fall, it's all right if you don't get it right, but actually, have you learned from what you've done? Have you learned from the things that have happened? And for me, that sits more well with me. Maybe you could also call it's our generation where we probably don't want to be stuck in rules and regulation. But the idea of spirituality is what I believe in. Because, for example, I always say, before, when I was younger, if I didn't go to church, I felt so bad. If I didn't pray, I didn't even know how to pray. I just knew you had to do it. When I found spirituality, it was more of, you don't have to necessarily go to a church to pray. You can pray even right now. You don't have to do the whole 2 hours. And for me, that sits more comfortable within, you'd say, my schedule, my life, my being, and I'm comfortable with it. I don't have to argue with anyone. And I think understanding spirituality is also understanding that people don't necessarily have to be quote unquote religious or spiritual. They can just sit where they want, and when they're ready, they will take it in. And that's why I'll 1,000%, if we have to go through again, what are you spiritual?
Yeah. And over in Kenya, though Judy is proudly Christian herself, she's very aware of the more traditional practices and shared what she knew about them with us.
You see, the people, the tradition people, they used to worship like things like idol worship. They were worshiping in shrines. But now you see, in this time now, because we don't think that we are in those ancient times now. Now the people that now we are existing, we usually believe in God, and we worship, and we call ourselves as Christians. As in, it is divided. You find that they are Protestants, they are Christians, and many of them. You find that there are some people who are Christians. Now the people that are Christians, they don't relate with those people that believe in those traditional, like pouring of wines to their ancestors. No, now Christians, they usually believe in God, and they worship God, and even it's the thing that they want it to happen. They will go to church, pray to God to make that thing happen. But you see, now there is this certain people who believe in those ancestors, that they will pour that wine to them, and then in believing that ancestors will help them, the thing that they wanted to happen, it will happen, because they have faith in those ancestors, that the thing they are doing will happen. They usually respect each other, because you can go in a certain family and you find that the wife and the children are Christians, but the father doesn't value this Christianity. is believing in that ancestry. Now the father, for example, the father does those things of pouring wine to the ancestors in order the things to happen well. But the wife and the children, they are Christians and they usually pray to God for things to happen. And you find them at home that they are all at peace because they respect each other.
The recording got a little clipped there. Judy is saying they respect each other. We haven't heard from Belen for a while. As a reminder, she's a student in Lima, Peru.
Yes, since my childhood years, I've been studying like in Catholic schools. And I've been always like believing that God's the person we should be grateful of due to the things he made for us. Like he gave us this planet, he gave us this opportunity to be living day by day. And he also gives us every day the opportunity to become better. So yes, my family is like very Catholic in that way to say. Like we always go to church, we always pray. I love to pray before like going to sleep, and also when I wake up to tell God that I'm really grateful for each opportunity he gives me. So I believe that I've been always being created with that mindset that God's the person that we should believe about. I've always explored like each type of religion, like investigate about them and see all the traditions. I respect every religion, but I believe I'm a Catholic person.
I asked Belen if her family has any traditional practices outside of religion.
Yes, they are my grandparents of my father's side family. They used to live in the highlands here in my country. So they usually goes for the Holy Week to their town where they were born. They love the traditional dances of that town. Also, their traditions are like they are together, all the communities and all that. They sit together, they talk together, and they know, all the community know each other, like all the town know them and all that. That's really, really cool because once I went there, every person knows my grandmother and my grandfather, and it's like something amazing. Here in my country, there were like some things like a tradition called the pachamanca, that it's like a dish that is commonly served to the god of the earth. I think something like that was called. My grandmother teach me that when I was like younger, and they like a dance and a whole event for doing that dish. So yes, there are many traditions here. I'm not really aware of all of them, but the ones that I know about, they usually used to go to their towns to celebrate it. And here also in the capital, there are like many clubs where people from that towns come to here, who live here, goes to that places to celebrate that traditions too.
Do the religions and the traditions mix?
Yes, they mix because this tradition of the dish and all that, of the god of the earth, that was like commonly in the past, and they are still doing it because that's a tradition they have. But people like in these towns also believe in Catholicism. So yeah, they are really Catholic. They have a lot of church, and in the municipality that is like the center of all the town, there is a Catholic church because they have even a saint there, like a monument of a saint there. So they're really people that are really like Catholic in the way to say, yeah.
Elaine reflects on his experiences that started in religion.
Sure. I'm grateful that I was raised within a religion. I find it interesting because you don't technically have a choice. You know, you don't have much agency when you get baptized. Like one. And in confirmation, there's this kind of weird peer pressure. Like, you know, you're there as a young teen, ever saying, you know, it's time. It's like, okay. So being raised as a Christian was probably more to do with education than it was to do with God, in that a school that was a Catholic school or a religious school might afford you a better education than the standard state education. So my parents went out of their way to take us to Bible studies. They took that stuff seriously, man. Went to Sunday school. Like, I'm just full of parables. I mean, just shake me and parables fall out. I'm like, yeah, in the Garden of Gethsemane, when Jesus was left sleeping and the disciples fell asleep. I'm like, how do I know this? I don't even remember reading it. There was no YouTube back then. It's like osmosis. I'm just full of scripture. But, you know, I guess your parents don't pass on the cynicism. So you receive the gospel, you receive these stories. And I think there's value in all religious scripture, whether it's, you know, Judaism or Christianity, Buddhism, you know, whatever it is, there's an inherent truth in universal truth. Like, it's written in books in different ways for different reasons. And going back to the point, I'm glad I was raised spiritually, because it's harder to believe in God if you were raised godless. I think it's just really odd just to wake up like at 25 and someone says, oh, by the way, there's this great force that holds us all together and connects us and provides us infinite possibilities, and we ascend to a higher realm. It's like, yo, this is too complex. I'm just going to go and get a sandwich and I might not come back. It's too mind-blowing. So I think you can switch spiritualities and go on adventures if you have that kind of grounding. So I came out of Christianity in the sense of, I believe in a higher power. I don't explicitly believe in this kind of tournament style, winner stays on, Christianity versus Islam, this versus that, this versus that, and my one's the right one. I don't think a universal force would operate in division. It doesn't make sense to me. So I try and listen to all ideas that people have spiritually and understand what makes them smile. I think one of the best reasons to believe in anyone's spirituality is, what is it doing for them? Do they have peace? Are they smiling, or are they angry preaching? If you're angry preaching, kind of maybe not interested in that particular version. But if you just seem to be at peace with yourself, it inspires a question: what makes you happy? Because I might want some of that happiness. Like, I met Herbie Hancock, which was an absolute like bucket list moment. You know, I got to introduce him for a show in London, and in my research, you know, how he discovered Buddhism was just because one of his band members had just found Buddhism and he was just kicking ass. He was playing so good on hardly any sleep. And Herbie's like, how are you playing so good and finding all the good notes and you haven't slept? Because I was up all night with you. And the guy goes, I just started practicing Buddhism. And Herbie's like, yeah, that might be it for me. And, you know, 82 years old and a huge advocate, you know, of his spiritual practice. So yeah, I'm up for it. I'm a journeyman, learning so much. I mean, Jesus, you know, or Yeshua, you know, turns up in Islam as well. It's just like, you know, not to be blasphemous, it just feels like one of those Marvel adventures where all these gods and characters turn up in each other's stories. You know, I don't think it's as linear as people make out to be. So I have a spiritual practice. I do meditate when I can. You know, about weaponizing religion in the sense of like taking out the kind of more triggering contemporary reality. You know, the St. James version of the Bible was a rewrite of the Bible by authorized by King James in order to control the narrative, to actually say, I will tell you how spirituality works. You know, and Henry VIII needed to create the Church of England because he wanted to divorce his wife. So, you know, it was, you know, very mundane things, people weaponizing it for political means. The King James Bible is the reason why you have Jamestown. You know, Jamestown is the town of James, you know, which, you know, began the whole, you know, the birth of modern America. And these books were weapons. You know, they were used to subjugate other groups and say, this is the new religion. This is what they exported to Africa. So we have to just realize that the original spirituality that we understand as far back as Egypt, you know, everything stems from that. It's a reworking and a remix of that. We just be aware that people often weaponize it. They give us a white Jesus, they give us a white savior, and where's our savior that looks like us? they be hidden in the back of the Vatican, them places there where they worship the Black Madonna. You know, just big facts. Ask them, no lies is told, man.
Andrea is in the Caribbean, so of course the mixing of African spirituality and organized religion has a huge presence.
I wouldn't say necessarily you would find many, well, God, generations are changing. You might find them now more atheists, agnostics. But I would say people tend to believe in something here rather than nothing. So if they're not, obviously Roman Catholicism is big, Anglicanism is big, but we have growing, Pentecostalism is big and very vibrant. And what is growing, I think, and I find very refreshing, is our what we call spiritual Baptists or Shouter Baptists or Orisha type, more African, where that's coming from. And that actually is a very interesting history, because the Shouter Baptists were actually banned by the colonialists because they saw it as a threat, the drumming, the drums that go with it, and the catching of the spirit and all that kind of stuff. And they could, the Europeans, if they don't understand it, they demonize it. So, but then they actually had a law that prohibited that, and that was overturned as part of our independence and becoming a republic. So now we have a holiday to celebrate the Shouter Baptists, and it's a very powerful religion. Very, it takes you right back to Africa, right back to our beginnings. And I love the power of it. I love Oludare and the Orisha mix. But it's interesting how that is, grown up, because it's all mixed up with the Roman Catholicism and all of that. Yeah. If you look down in every culture, we have the same things. That's why sometimes I don't understand what these wars are about. Because I would go to Japan, I would go to Hungary, I would go to Scotland, and in every rural community, you find the similarities in how people are, how they behave to each other, the sense of community, like what I was saying around food, around music, and the Jewish community, it's all the same. The problem is when you start thinking, when you're in a metropolitan area, where you lose all of that. Every metropolitan area loses the culture. But when you go back to the rural spaces of any community, that's where you will find the similarities between every person on this planet. They do things exactly the same way in rural communities. And if we could just tap into that, it's such a beautiful thing. Then we realize how similar we all are.
Here's Olu from Nigeria.
I am a different person. Nigerians, we are deeply religious people. If you are not a Christian, you are a Muslim, or you are a traditional worshiper. I am a spiritualist. I believe in spirituality. I don't believe in religion. Religion can say, okay, you must do this. These are our rules. But I believe that the only connection I want to have is with God, the Creator. So the Creator is heaven. I believe that this world did not come up by mistake. I know some people came and said, okay, this is what we want to create, and they created us. So I prefer to have connection and relationship with the God, the Creator of the universe. In Nigeria, we have Muslims, we have Christians, we have traditionalists, those who believe in the gods. So all the tribes, we have different gods. There are more than 100 gods in Nigeria. So the Yorubas too, they have. But we have Christians, we have Muslims. We have those who are just religious. If they are religious, tell them kill 100 people, they are ready to do that. So I believe that I am a spiritual being. I prefer to toe that line.
So do the religions and the spiritualities mix somehow?
Religious people can tell you that only Christians are going to heaven. Muslims will never go to heaven. Traditionalists will never go to heaven. I don't believe so. I believe that my spirituality is different from your spirituality. The way you are going to deal with your own is different from the way I am dealing with mine. That the differences does not mean that we have different gods or many gods. No. But many people will never believe what I am telling you now in Nigeria. A Christian will tell you if you are not a Christian, you go to hell. A Muslim will tell you if you don't worship Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you are going to hell. A traditionalist will tell you Christians and Muslims, they are lost. But me, I don't believe so. I believe that we are all trying our best to move to the same spiritual level. Some people are Muslims, some people are Christian, and they have high spiritual level. The religion to me does not matter. But a normal Nigerian do not believe what I am telling you. They will tell you if you are not a Muslim, you are a demon. If you are not a Christian, you are devil. If you are a traditionalist, you are hellfire. I believe if there is a heaven, when we get there, we will see Muslims, we will see Christians, we will see free thinkers, we will see spiritualists, and we will see traditionalists. That is my own belief. Everything depends on your character, on your person, and the works that you have done on earth.
At the end of our conversation, Olu expressed a sentiment that I heard from people a lot in my travels in West Africa. It had to do with whether or not she believes there was a whole bunch of people who were just purely Christian and only Christian and never practiced any of the traditions.
My sister, it is not the truth. The traditionalists, they are the Christians and the Muslims. When you see them during the day, they are Muslims. When you see them during the afternoon, they are Christians. But at night, when they have challenges, they will go to the traditionalists secretly. When you see a Nigerian there going to church, it's a traditionalist secretly. Many of them just cover up because you don't want to see traditionalists. Very few people are genuinely Muslims, 100%, genuinely Christians, 100%. When they have challenges, when they have problems, when their children are dying, that is when you know whether they are traditional.
Well, the secret is out. Tradition cannot be erased. Let's hear from Yvette, who is from Ghana, living in Germany, navigating tradition, spirituality, and religion.
I can say I see myself really cosmopolitan in it, you know. I can say I have a family which you will find the colonialism between us. You find the African culture between us and tradition. You find religion. I can say we were not for religion before, but through colonialism, we adapt religion. My great-grandparents was not in the Christianism before. Through colonialism, Christianity came. And especially my father's side, really, they are Catholic. They are Catholic because of colonialism, you know. But my grandmother and my grandfather was born in a voodoo shrine, my father's side, and have voodoo's name. They have voodoo's sign on their face. But colonialism turned them to really Catholic. I can say, unfortunately, they even abandoned their culture and tradition and took the Christianism. But my mother's side, they adapt themselves too, but they have to be in the culture and they have to be in the tradition because they are royalty. They have royal blood. They have royal home. So they can abandon completely their culture and tradition and get into religion. So I can say I experiences a lot. Catholic, Presbyterian, my mother's side, and then the African culture and tradition, which I've learned a lot from my grandmother's side. And I'm still living. I can say I have learned to live in the African culture and tradition. I was grown up in the colonial tradition, and I turned myself because there was a lot of obstacles which brought me back to my roots.
And what is that like for you living in Germany?
Here is very difficult to have the community because I can say my African sisters and brothers, some, because of the colonialism, they are ashamed of their tradition. They are ashamed of their culture. If you are not Christian, if they ask you, are you Christian? If you said no, then they separate themselves from you. And that is really a pity because they will say, oh, so you are not in the norm of everyone. You are not Christian. You are not in the norm of everyone. And that is a big mistake. I accept everyone. I accept Muslim. I accept everyone who come to me. If I want to say, oh no, now I'm just serving those who are in voodoo, that will not be good for me. So I open my door to everyone who come to me. So my community is mixed. It's mixed from German, from Brazil. I have mostly women in my community. So they are from everywhere. Spain, Italian. I have everyone in my community. And I have every religion in my community. That's the diversity is acceptable by me. That's why I have everyone. And the only thing I can say, what I want to do more work on it, is to approach more my African sisters and brothers to be in this community. And if I go back to Africa, then my community is again from all those four countries: Nigeria, Benin, Ghana, and Togo. And now I am bringing the diaspora to my community in Africa. And I can say they are welcome. The diaspora, they are welcome. We just need to give each other respect. Then we can be together. Respect and love. Accept your next, even if they don't have your color.
I caught some similarities with how different people talked about their ancestors, how they engage with them, and different practices that they've seen in their areas. I was delighted to hear that Judy in Kenya and Andrea in Trinidad shared that it's a common traditional practice where they live to respectively pour out libation for someone who has died. It's a common practice for here in the diaspora as well. I mean, there's whole songs about it.
Okay, yes. In our culture, we believe in those. You find that there are some people now, like those people that are not, they don't revere them as Christians. You find that they believe in those ancestors and they perform things of tradition. Like you see, when we have ceremonies, it's must that the old people now, they came together, they discuss some things, and even there is something like alcohol that those people will gather together and pour. They believe in that, giving those ancestry that wine that they will pour on the ground will please them, and the things that they are doing will succeed. They won't fail when they pour that wine to the ground to those ancestors.
I think every Trinidadian, when you open a bottle of rum, right, they will pour the first drops in each corner of that room, in honor of the ancestors. So, there is that awareness that yes, we have those who have been before us and whose wisdom we call on, kind of thing.
I asked the question, what is your relationship with ancestors? Here's what Yvette had to say.
A deep relationship, a deep one. I always said, because we don't know God, we know our grandfathers. If you have ever seen your grandfather, then you know God. If you have ever seen your grandmother, you know God. If you see your mother, you know God. So I have a deep, deep relationship to my ancestry. I honor them. I honor them a lot in different way. Even in prayers, they are, for me, my ancestry are my angels. If I wake up in the morning, I call them to be with me. I call God, I call my spirit, then I call my ancestors. They are the one I have the blood lineage with. So I have a deep respect to them. Those I have seen, like my grandmother, if they are no more, then they turn to my ancestors. And I pray to them and I call them. If I'm in need, if I'm happy, if I'm sad, I always call them. I call them when I wake up to be with me in the morning, to be with me in the afternoon and in the night, to guide me, to protect me. So they have a very, very serious impact in my life. And I can say I have taught my children to respect their ancestry. If you respect your ancestors, then you respect your mother and father. It's very important to know that, because the Creator, someone created this world, someone have something to do with it, but they put family lineage on our way. They are our ancestors. I can't imagine a day not mention my great-grandfather's name. I can imagine a day, because he is always with me. And I would say those who don't know their ancestry, it's okay to say, The name, just say, my ancestors protect me. They're here. They are there. If you don't know them, you will say, protect me and show yourself to me. All what they need is our respect and our love. You know, as we love the human being walking around, the same love we have to give to our ancestry. It's not just because they are no more, then we forget them. No. You can't forget your blood. You know, if they said black is thicker than water, I can explain it like, you know, this, the blood. You can never change it. Water, you can put color in it and it will change the color. But the blood is not possible. So our ancestry are very, you know, very important in our life.
Here's Rachel graciously sharing her personal experience with her ancestor with a cautious stance on spirituality.
I am very much connected, because of obviously tradition, I'm very much connected with family lineage, the people before us, respecting the ancestors, even like the little customs that we have to do, say, for example, when you have a child or when you buy a new car or get a house. Those things, I still believe in them, even though I was not there when they were created. I still respect them. In terms of why I also say I'm spiritual is, for example, my connection with, or my relationship I had with my late grandfather. He died when I was so young, but because I'm so sickly, there's been 3 incidents where I've been very, very sick, and he's been there for me in a spiritual sense. And I've been there, he's sat with me. And when I've talked about it, it's always felt calm. It's never felt like bad energy. And my mom's always been like, okay, that's basically your spiritual guide who's there for you. And even like a very, very close friend of mine who died a long time ago. So in terms of ancestry, I think that's how I would connect with it. At the same time, I do also believe in there's obviously evil, and I don't really want to look into it that much because it's all of like, respect it and leave it where it's at. So yeah, because I'm such a chicken at the end of the day. Honestly, I can't even watch horror movies, so I'm a chicken there. But I do believe that as much as there's like the good side of spirituality, there is definitely the bad side, and you just have to keep praying that, yeah.
Let's hear from West Africa again. Here's Olu from Nigeria.
Yes, it may be unchristian or un-Islamic, but we, the people from our tribe, we believe in our ancestors. We believe they don't die. We believe they are with us. We believe they live with us. We believe they come back to us. We have children that are exactly our mother. You know, my sister, sometimes when I open my mouth, my mother will speak, not me. And I know. So you can say, oh, she's not spiritual. I will say, it's okay. When things happen, I go to speak with my mother. We have trainings every year on transformation for leaders. We go greet my mother. And she died 10 years ago. So when I come, I enter, I say, Mommy, I am here. I greet her as if she could answer. And she's there, down 6 feet deep. We know our ancestors. We respect them. They don't leave us. When you move with your ancestors. We have our ancestors. We bear their name. We name our children after them. We don't forget them. They don't leave. They don't leave. They don't leave. They don't leave. In my place, there are things you want to do. They will tell you first to go and worship your ancestor first before you can start whatever it is you are. Yes. We respect them. We honor them. We honor them.
This is the end of part 4. Thank you for listening to the Afro Storybook today. If you know someone who would love this episode, please share it with them. But don't go yet, because Jabori Abla-Yvette has shared a lovely prayer with us. Enjoy.
Ago, Mausebolisa. I am grateful that I am awake today. I hope all my spiritual sisters, brothers, children, I hope they are all awake. Join me, Mausebolisa. Join me in blessings. Refresh our thoughts so that the ability to understand what is most appropriate and timely for our life ring in our mind. Be in our heart, our home, our workplace, and all the places where we find ourselves with peace. Cover us with your mantle, filling us with health and your infinite love.
Afro Storybook, collective wisdom and revelations from Africa and her diaspora. I'm your host, producer, and editor, Alexandra Loves Aya Iwo-Riosa. You can find me at themoongardentemple.com or on IG at Tranquil Badassery. This is a production of the Moon Garden Temple and the Woke Wisdom Podcast. Please go to www.wokewisdompodcast.com or on IG, Woke Wisdom Podcast, to learn more about the storybook and my guests. My guests are Elaine Fusion Clapham, Judy Kalunga Kwavoile, Mike Crenshaw, Bailin Ramirez, Jabori Abla-Yvette, Chekamala Diabate, Rachel Bashabe, Andrea Sugar Black Encinas, and Olutosin Oladoshu Adebwale. Special thanks to the Portland Regional Arts Council for the initial funding of this project. And also special thanks to Seven Vision Studios for technical help and Quincy Davis for sharing his original compositions for the theme music and soundscaping for this storybook. Please consider supporting this project and future audio projects by subscribing to Woke Wisdom Podcast on Patreon. Thank you for listening and be blessed.